another area of trustee jurisdiction, the intertidal zone. This area is simply between the area of low tide and high tide. This habitat is a specialized environment where only certain species can survive in this unique area. When altered, disturbed, changed in any way, it's going to affect these organisms, sometimes drastically.
The intertidal zone is an area between the high tide line and the low tide line where it's high energy and a lot of species live that depend on it for their food supply. The area is important because it provides a fundamental basis of the food web in the form of detritus. As wave energy hits this area, detritus is launched into the water column and the herbivores such as grass shrimp feed upon it. Some of the other species include the hermit crab, the periwinkle snail, and the rib mussel. One of the most significant effects that man has on the area is the installation of traditional bulkheads. By nature of the design, they result in a net loss of intertidal zone habitat. To put the impacts of a bulkhead on the intertidal zone in perspective, it would be like boarding up your doors and your windows in your home and then trying to live in it.
Hi, I'm Bob Gocio, Southold Town Trustee, and I'm at a site where you can see a classic example of how a bulkhead interferes with the intertidal zone. As you can see on my right is a naturally occurring intertidal zone which shows Spartina grass on the shoreline. Over here, a bulkhead was built a few years ago, and you can see the difference in the vegetation in that there really is no Spartina left. And now what we're seeing on the top of this bulkhead is thriving invasive species. The bulkhead itself, this particular bulkhead was constructed out of CCA. And we can see that it's CCA because you can see the leachate coming out of it on the side. The reason that the trustees have decided not to allow CCA to be used on the sheathing or on the top of a bulkhead or on a deck would be because of the leachate. We don't like to see anything with any kind of chemical preservatives used in the building of a bulkhead because of the chemicals that can leach into the habitat area. First, it should be said that in general, in the creeks and on the bay, the trustees are not really permitting bulkheads unless there is proof that they are definitely needed. In which case, we prefer low-sill bulkheads. Now, a low-sill bulkhead allows for a shorter structure in the intertidal zone. So what you'd end up seeing is Spartina grass growing behind it because the water can get over the top of the bulkhead. And that's the point. You want to be able to protect the toe of the beach or the toe of the bluff with the bulkhead and perhaps a rock revetment while allowing the water to get over to the top of it so that it can feed the intertidal zone and all the species that thrive in the intertidal zone. That is the importance of a low-sill bulkhead. Another issue that the trustees have in terms of permitting bulkheads, particularly when replacing existing bulkheads, is that we add a non-turf pervious buffer just behind the bulkhead. So the trustees are always looking to make sure that there's a buffer behind the bulkhead.
The intertidal zone spreads out into a much larger, more valuable ecosystem called an estuary. Some of you may refer to these areas as creeks, wetlands, or marshes. No matter what name they go by, they have values that many of us are not aware of. Let's hear about the many reasons to protect and preserve these specialized areas from a past president of the trustees and a lifelong naturalist of Southold Town.
These marshes that we speak of are so valuable and so few people realize their value. Okay, they act as a filter. You know, you have a filter in your car or to clean the oil. Well, this cleans the water, these many multitude of greenery. They also act as a nutrient area. You know what a compost pile is, I assume. Well, this is a major compost pile. The dead reeds and grasses create nutrients that when the tide comes in and takes them out into the creek for the plankton to utilize. So it's also a nutrient area. It's a wildlife sanctuary too. Here we find sharp-tailed sparrows. The only place this bird nests is in these marshes. And of course there's herons that live in the marshes. There's so many things that are part of our everyday life. And visual, can you imagine not seeing this marsh with its beautiful greenery taken away and have mud flats here? So it has a visual importance too. It also acts as a storm buffer. You know, when the waves come in and wash out all the sand and mud, these grow in its place and work back and forth and prevent that. So we have them acting as a buffer for storms uses, but I think that's basically what it's all about. The filtering, the nursery area. With tiny little fish this big, you'll find working way up into the area that gives them the protection from predators. So I guess what I was saying is, this is one of the most valuable resources that Southold town has. And if we don't start to understand it and appreciate it, we're in bad trouble.